All right, yeah. So, welcome to an Apocalypsis Historia interview, and today we are here with the one of the key figures who kind of got me into the sax scene, and we have Kier Cutler, the infamous Canadian himself, on the scene or on the call, and yeah, he's a one man show, a tour de force, and now an educator also in the theater scene, as I understand it. So. Yeah, Kier, if you just want to do a quick synopsis, if you can, of your sort of, where you find yourself in the Shakespeare scene at large.
Well, thank you, guys. I'm a fan of you, of both of you. Um, I have a PhD in theater from Wayne State University in Detroit. I'm a huge Detroit Lions fan, and I've been involved in doing one-man shows. I've actually lost track, but I think I've written and performed 12. I've written several others that I haven't yet performed. I'm currently doing Joan of Arc Ascending, which is about Joan of Arc, which has Shakespeare in it. As you know, Joan of Arc is a character in Shakespeare, which is an interesting aspect that you guys are interested in because of the way Shakespeare deals with the apparitions and in her life. I got interested in the subject, well, from my mother. She was a big literary person, a publisher, read extensively, and she went to McGill University, and they had an extensive library on the Shakespeare authorship question, going back to Bacon, which as you know, in the late 19th century, it was all about Bacon. It was Bacon or Shakespeare, and Bacon came very close to actually replacing Shakespeare. We had Mark Twain and a lot of really big figures back then pushing Bacon, and she got me interested in it. And when I was doing my one-man shows, I said, "Gee, it would make a good play." And I actually thought I was going to write a play about a crackpot who believed that Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare. I was going to make fun of how stupid that position was. And so I started researching it, and I said, "Well, wait a second. I think I'm coming from the wrong angle on this." And things like there's no letters of Shakespeare. That was I just couldn't believe that. He wrote 900,000 words, but there's no evidence he ever wrote a letter to anyone. And then on and on it goes, of course. And once you start looking into the biography, you realize it really is a house of cards. And so I ended up, I wanted the play to have humor in it, and I didn't really see how the subject had humor. But I heard that Mark Twain had written the funniest thing on the Shakespeare authorship question called "Is Shakespeare Dead?" And of course, wonderfully enough, Mark Twain is in the public domain. So I said, wow, I better look at this. And everything fell into place from there. I was able to take the funny parts of the book, which are hilarious, and then just add to it, because by then I was involved with I'm very close with a lot of Oxfordians. I'm not an Oxfordian myself. I'm a doubter, but I know a lot of Oxfordians. I've performed for their annual events many times over the years. And they're very, very astute and study the subject and know it far greater than I do. And using their information and my research, and of course, the wonderful humor in Mark Twain, I did what ended up being an extremely successful play that actually aired nationally and televised nationally in Canada, which was quite an honor to be on national TV several times, actually, because it was on the Bravo Canada, which ran it, I think, 7 times, and I got a lot of contact from that. And people started contacting me to come and perform for them. And I did the show for many years. I haven't done it recently, but of course the videos have been on YouTube in one form or another for about 20 years, and it's thousands and thousands of hits. And I still get contact from people about that. And subsequently, I did more plays. I did a play called Shakespeare Crackpot, which was about my experience with Is Shakespeare Dead? And that was, I guess, the highlight of my career, which one of those, not everybody knows when the highlight of their career is coming, but I knew this was because I had been in contact with, I think it's called the Shakespearean Authorship. I remember the exact title they have, but they're an organization in England. And I knew they had an annual event. And I also knew that Sir Mark Rylance and Sir Derek Jacobi attended it. And I said, oh boy. So I had been in touch with them, and I said, You tell me when, and I'll be there. They said, well, I don't care when it is. I'm flying over. And sure enough, they put me on the schedule. They let me do my entire piece, and they filmed it really well with microphones and so forth. So that's online, and it was an incredible event. I mean, and I got a picture, of course. I said to my wife after I do the performance, I'm pretty sure Mark Rylance and Derek Jacobi are going to congratulate me. Be ready with the camera. And so the highlight of my career was having arguably the two greatest Shakespearean actors of our time on either side, both authorship skeptics, and there it was in good old London, England.
Way too cool. Way too cool. Thanks for sharing all that. I mean, I get starstruck talking to you. Do you get starstruck talking to other people like that?
Well, it was an interesting event because they had seen his Shakespeare Dead. That's the wonderful thing about YouTube. It'd be wonderful for you guys too. You're gonna, as you grow, and I'm sure your YouTube channel is going to grow because it's really interesting, and it's exciting to watch. So you'll certainly make some people shy. Yeah, it was as soon as I walked into the room, Mark Rylance, who's just the bigger there's a saying, the bigger they are, the nicer they are. And with Derek Jacobi and Mark Rylance, they epitomize that.
Oh, wow.
And Mark Rylance ran over to me and said, "Oh, Kier, I'm going to be reading different Shakespearean things, and I want to read a bit of his Shakespeare Dead. Is that okay with you?" And I was like, first of all, Mark Twain wrote it. And secondly, I would be honored. And of course, he read part of his Shakespeare Dead, which was a part I didn't use because I didn't think it could be done well. And if you're a Mark Rylance fan, I can tell you something about him. His ability to read text is on a level, is supernatural. I mean, his ability. This was a whole day, which I believe they still do. An entire day at the Shakespeare Globe. They have a beautiful lecture hall there, and all day long it's Shakespeare authorship lectures, including my performance. And in between each lecture, Mark Rylance and Derek Jacobi and other great actors get up and read from Shakespeare or from Mark Twain or what have you. It's an incredible event. It's just the most wonderful day. So I wasn't allowed time to be shy of Mark Rylance because he was asking permission to read Mark Twain's work in front of me as though I somehow possessed it because I had done the one-man show on his work.
Way too cool.
He was trying not to Jimi Hendrix you know. He was trying not to come on stage after the Who or whatever, So.
Yeah, and I am actually personally a huge Mark Rylance fan. Wolf Hall is just absolutely, to me, the pinnacle. It's the best TV in the last 2 decades. So, and I've read part of Mantell's novels, and I liked them, and then seeing Mark do Cromwell, or as my roommate says, Cromwell. He's unbelievable. But let me see. I think Brady has a list of some questions that he wanted to, rocket fire at you and maybe get a hot take. No pressure, but general Shakespeare authorship question or just Shakespeare kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you said that the YouTube video has been online for about 20 years or so, and so you're someone who's ideal for me and Chance, someone who's just a doubter, right? Someone who's just a skeptic, kind of takes it, as it comes. But how has the scene, do you think, has changed since you've entered, right? Have you seen, what ebbs and flows have you seen, or have you taken notice of, or do you think that has, any lasting power or whatnot?
That is a great question, Brady. Fantastic question. It's changed enormously. When I started looking into this, there was still the phrase Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare, period, which is what got me into it. And I credit the Oxfordians because they scared the Stratfordians in England, I think, quite a bit. Especially the late great Alexander Waugh, who was just a genius. My God, that man's mind. I mean, if there were robots before robots, he was a robot. I mean, his mind was, and in debates, I mean, oh boy, you wouldn't want to be on the other side of any debate with him. So I think he scared them because what has happened in just the 25 years or so that I've been involved in it is it's gone from Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare to Shakespeare was a collaborator, and we don't know how many collaborations there were. One of the videos I talk about this book, which is their book. This is the Bible for Shakespeare traditional Stratfordians. It's called Shakespeare Beyond Doubt. In other words, there is no doubt. And they admit in this book, which I credit. Okay, I'll take some credit for it. But this is an incredible statement because, given it, it's them talking. It's not me talking. It's right out of Stratford-upon-Avon, right out of the Birthplace Trust, which is the center of all of this Stratfordian belief that there is no question about who wrote Shakespeare. Quote, "We may find that some passages, even some widely beloved sections of plays or favorite lines, were not all of his own work." This is them talking, and this is talking about the future. Well, I mean, when I read that, I said, "Oh, I've won the debate. This is what I wanted. I just want you to admit you don't know what he wrote."
Absolutely. I love that you bring that up. That is one of our big pushes on this channel is that let's go back to the early 1900s when even Orthodox people had this big penchant to disintegrate Shakespeare. And it was used as this pejorative term that if you questioned the whole canon of Shakespeare, you were some disintegrator. And we've gotten back to that point, but they haven't brought that pejorative sense back. Like, they think they've sort of washed that history away, but so much of the Shakespeare authorship question side feels it as a pejorative, and I myself find myself in the middle where I sense that, okay, this is maybe an attack on possibly saying there is a singular author, but also that this is a good and valid point that we don't know exactly how many hands are in the canon. And as soon as we admit we don't know how many hands are in the canon, how can we say which hands are in the canon? And if they're admitting that, they're sort of admitting that at this point Shakespeare is a holistic brand. It is a holistic summarized, it is all his canon, and we can't anatomize it or atomize it into the particular pieces. And I feel like the new push in Orthodox is almost to come up with methodologies to validate that in a sense to say, oh no, we can't actually look far enough into it to anatomize it, but we know for this, and that reason it is mostly Shakespeare, and they kind of are trying to hover in this middle ground. Sorry for rambling, but I think that's what I was trying to get at, is that there's this weird straddling of the fence here.
I agree. Well, that's the humorous part about it. There's two sides to it. One, the reason for them accepting the collaboration is because it does strengthen their position in that anything that comes up where they go, or something that is discovered and they go, oh my God, he didn't write King Lear. He had nothing to do with King Lear. So, well, we never said he wrote King Lear. We said he wrote most of the plays. So they've put themselves in a position where it's a moving target. The goalpost, right. It's not only moving the goalposts, there are no goalposts.
Absolutely.
There's no field. Anything could have been written by somebody else. There were lots of collaborators. One of the interesting points that I make in one of my videos, which I think is strong, is that University of Oxford has decided that the three Henry VI plays were not only collaborative, but co-written, by Marlowe, which means, what, 50% was written by Christopher Marlowe. And in this book, where they list the co-authors, they never mention Marlowe. Mm-hmm. Now, fine, it's an oversight. But the point is, it is so unclear who wrote what that University of Oxford can say, we're re-attributing three of the plays to co-author to Christopher Marlowe, and Shakespeare Birthplace Trust can say, oh, we forgot to mention Christopher Marlowe was one of the collaborators. That's the ground they're standing on.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I was noticing on Brady's shelf here, he has a copy of the Yale edition of Richard III, And in the essay at the end, which is by Harold Bloom gets the essays at the end of all these Yale editions. Harold Bloom makes this statement that Richard III is where Shakespeare starts to take leaps and bounds above, early Shakespeare, and that's how we can tell it's Shakespeare because nobody else could have done it. Well, except for maybe Christopher Marlowe, but nobody else could have done it. And then he ends the whole thing with, well, even Marlowe probably couldn't have done it, and so that kind of represents to me that stance where no, Shakespeare's not really collaborating with Marlowe, but well, yeah, on the Henry VI plays, but not really Richard III. And I'm glad you brought that up because a friend of ours, David Richardson, he's kind of the Mary Sidney guy in the Shakespeare authorship question scene. Apparently, he and Dennis McCarthy, who's the big Thomas North guy, they're going to do some kind of online debate specifically about the Upstart Crow and what the position should be on who Green is referring to in the Upstart Crow. Is it actually Stratford Shakespeare, or is it some veiled author as Shakespeare, or is it to another actor like Edward Allen or Richard Burbage, or is it something else and wholly different? And the big question that I have for the Orthodox scene is that, well, if we're saying that Shakespeare is the Upstart Crow, and Green is really mad about it. I mean, Green's real pissed at whoever this Upstart Crow is. He's warning three guys, and we seem to all agree that the first guy that he warns and warns the most heavily is Christopher Marlowe, because he goes on and on about his atheist buddy, you need to change your ways, and you really got to watch out for this Upstart Crow. It seems weird to me that, Christopher Marlowe would get that whole thing written to him and would be buddies with Robert Greene, and then immediately go, pal up with the Upstart Crow and go start co-writing with him. And so if we are going to start pushing this Marlowe attribution, I think people got to start going back and relooking at the Upstart Crow, stance. So
the Sudoku starts to fall apart, Yeah, the whole thing just has to be a lot more questioned.
I agree. The Marlowe thing is always fascinating because the murder story doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I'm not one that would say, well, Marlowe definitely survived and escaped to Italy, as some people say. I don't know, but I do know that the story of him being murdered by his friends because of a day where what was he doing in that bar? He was trying to figure out how he was going to keep from being tortured and brought in to the Star Chamber. He was in trouble. His life was in danger. Oh, he miraculously got murdered. And, it's just a very far-fetched story that of course, the traditionalists never tell you the background.
Right.
That he needed to be murdered right at that time. So it was very fortunate that he was murdered and somehow disappeared because there was no future for him in London at that point. So, and I know some really brilliant Marlovians. That's the fascinating thing about it. You've got brilliant Marlovians, you've got brilliant Oxfordians, you've got brilliant Baconians. You're talking about Mary Sidney. Yet I've looked into the North thing is very powerful. That's what is exciting about what you guys are doing as you go through Henslow and so forth, is it opens up this world that is so fascinating, and all of these characters are amazing. I was listening to your John Dee video, which is breathtaking, because of course the fascinating thing back then is that it was a different world, that they believed in ghosts and apparitions and fiends and devils and and of course you had the geocentric world which is a fascinating concept, the idea that everything that happens, a butterfly is connected to the king. I mean, it's an amazing universe that they believed in. And what makes Shakespeare so exciting is that, if you look out the sky, whatever's happening, up in the heavens is clearly a reflection of what's happening on Earth.
Right.
And now we've gone the opposite direction where everything is just so disjointed and disconnected, and we're all in our little silos. it's, there's an awful lot lost.
Right.
I'm not saying that every time there's a storm, the universe is mad at something happening on Earth, but there are some advantages to believing that nature is connected to human beings and that the stars and everything in the universe is one, as opposed to it's all separate and it's all different and it has no connection.
Absolutely. And, it's funny. I personally think a lot of that still exists in a weird way. Like, I'm not a climate change doubter or anything, but all the sort of, global warming and that, like, it's still the same thing. Like, we've made the heavens angry, and now the heavens are raining fire and heating our earth. And, so, like, but we're not aware of that. We don't kind of admit that that's still the relationship, even if we have puzzled it out a little more clearly. It's like the clearer we puzzle it out, the less we recognize that relationship. And we just absolutely lose the forest for the trees, right?
Right, and as the old saying, there's no atheists in foxholes. It doesn't take much. I'm doing a play that I'm very excited about. It's done really well, gone on really well. I've done it in 3 cities now. It's about Joan of Arc, but it's about the miraculous life of Joan of Arc. And I deal with Shakespeare, of course, because he wrote about her in a very condemning way, a very inaccurate way. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting about her is this singular belief that she was in contact with the divine and she was speaking to saints and so convinced that she was actually on a divine mission, she was willing to lead the armies of France. I mean, remember, this was a peasant girl with no education and no military training. And aside from all the miracles that happened to her, she took over the armies of France and led them to multiple victories and brought the rightful king to be coronated. It is an incredible story. Mm-hmm. And it involved miracle upon miracle upon miracle, aside from multiple injuries that were apparently close to fatal, that she survived and healed from, almost like Star Trek. I mean, the story is phenomenal, and it's all first person described because of the 2 trials she had, one in her life and one after her life, where eyewitnesses came up and said, "This is what I saw." She's one of the few peasants in history that we have absolute documented evidence about her life and what she thought. And she herself testified, of course, for hours, and it was all chronicled down. So it's an incredible story. And you realize that this world that lived before us, where now we even religious people see God as some distant thing in a cloud somewhere. It's not this world that existed before ours, where everything, where demons and angels and saints were operating and actively involved in everything you did. Well, that's one of the things that makes Shakespeare's work so exciting, is that at any moment, in fact, in his description of Joan of Arc, he gives away his prejudice. He has her summon her saints. I mean, she spoke to these saints, 3 saints, Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret, extensively, and that's what she said. But of course, for Shakespeare, he says enter fiends in his description in Henry VI, Part 1, and of course he makes her all demonic and all sorceress and all that. But this was their belief, that you could simply summon an angel or a devil and participate, or like Prospero summon the winds.
Right.
All of these powers were available. And of course, that's one of the things that makes Shakespeare's work so exciting, because everything is happening. Anyway, I can go on and on about how wonderful Shakespeare is.
Absolutely. Everything is available in the sense that we get access to that pre-Renaissance world, that medieval worldview, that classical worldview, where demons, gods, spirits, they exist. It's immediate. It's
supernatural stuff happens in Shakespeare. That's what I've kind of noticed. It's even the little things. It's not just the witches, which are crazy, but it's like Timon digging gold out of the ground, like when he's searching for roots or whatever. Right. It's just like those weird moments that are beyond. They're magical.
And but yet, he's not like, say, you know, Sir Gawain in the Green Knight, where we have to exist in this fairy tale romance world. There is so much, you know, modern psychology or, you know, modern rational thought. Like, Iago never once really tells a lie, never tells a fib. He, you know, he is as rational, hard nosed as anything. And Shakespeare just kind of lets all of that exist in his world. And any later than Shakespeare, we're losing the magic. Any earlier than Shakespeare, and we don't have the rhyme or reason yet. And there's something truly miraculous about that merging right at the, you know, 1600-ish, give or take a few decades.
I agree. I'll bring up an aspect that also is very important and extremely important, the Shakespeare authorship question, because the traditional story is that this, more or less uneducated person who may have had some grammar school wandered into London, got involved in a theater, got thrown up on stage as a spear carrier or an actor of some sort, and suddenly said, "Hey, I can write these plays," and sat down and started creating 2 or 3 masterpieces a year for 20 odd years. Because of that being the story, there's a tremendous need to dumb down Shakespeare. And when you dispense with this mythological idea that this uneducated bumpkin wandered in, but he had a grammar, they build up the grammar school. The grammar school was the equivalent to a PhD at Harvard. They build that up, but they admit, he only went for a few years because his father's, when his father's life turned for the bad, he did no longer had education. But there's no evidence he had education. It's just that he could have had education. It's all this built up mythology. But it is necessary to dumb down Shakespeare. But when you don't dumb him down and you actually look into the works, the medical information of the time and the legal information and the list of things that he had to have access to is just, it's encyclopedic and it's phenomenal. And of course, another thing the traditionalists do, they try and find errors. They say, "Oh, look how dumb Shakespeare was. He did this. Look, he said that. What is it? What's
the coast of Italy? That there's no canals there.
Yeah,
it's not even on the coast, and it's like, oh, canals did used to be there, and why would they be?
The Italy ones are phenomenal. There's a long list that I go through. They're phenomenal because, of course, they say, "Oh, this isn't true," and then a little research, "Oh, it was true." But even if there are mistakes, 1 or 2 mistakes or 10 mistakes, he wrote 900,000 words in his plays and poems, and there is phenomenal information there. And dumbing it down to fit a preconceived biography is ridiculous and unfortunate. And I'm so happy that you guys are continuing the mission to try and just open it up. It's not helpful to try and say, well, we've got to find a way to take these works and force them in this round works into this square hole of Shakespeare's biography.
Right. Absolutely. There's a really great Oxfordian channel out there. It's called Context Shakespeare. It's run by a lady named Claire Davies. She's out of Wales. And she just does these super deep dives on like a single play, and she'll talk for 3 or 4 hours about just the historical context of a certain play. And her one on The Tempest absolutely like blew my mind wide open because, there's the whole argument about, this is all about the shipwreck in Bermuda, and that there's a line in The Tempest that talks about the Bermuths. And she was saying, yes, it is a reference to Bermuda, but why is it with this particular spelling? Well, it's a pun on vermouth, and that so much of this is actually about stuff that's happening on the Greek and Italian coast, and that it's specifically about the city of Venice and the doctors in Venice that are at war with the Pope because they have actual medical prescriptions that can help people, and the popes are like, no, you can only do spiritual healing, and they're like, no, we have these potions, and the potion literally is like vermouth. And so it goes into like Caliban. He's not some deranged monster. He's somebody with a horrible skin condition, and vermouth would have been exactly what somebody with that skin condition could have been prescribed. that would have been the cutting edge medicine circa 1580s or 1590s. And there's a reason that Caliban starts treating these guys as gods. It's not that he's some horrible savage that gets firewater for the first time and thinks these white men gods. It's that he is has this horrible ailment. They give him this like potion that finally gives him relief for the first time in his life, and he's, oh my god, you guys are miracle healers, I'll do anything you say. And that just totally blew my mind open. It made the Tempest way more, I don't know, palatable in this post-colonial climate that we're in. It made Caliban and Stefano and Trinculo way more interesting, and not just this goofy little subplot. And so shout out to Claire, thank you. But that's just one of the many examples, absolutely. I have a question for you, and this is a big loaded question, and maybe this is two questions, but where do you think the Shakespeare authorship question is headed? Like, you've been in this 20, 30, 40 years. Where's it going that many years from now? Where do you expect it to be? And then I guess the second part of that question is, where would you want it to be?
Well, obviously, I want to put the two together. Where I want it to be is where it's going. It's going to what we're talking about here, a full investigation of Shakespeare, putting aside, Mark Rylance's point is that whatever happened, William of Stratford, his name wasn't Shakespeare. Generally speaking, Shakespeare is the author and Shakespeare is the person from Stratford. But William of Stratford, he was there. He was involved. He certainly existed. He certainly was at the Globe Theater. He certainly was a theater manager. He was a person. So, so we're not trying to erase him. We're just saying he was there. We don't know what participation he had. The traditional Stratfordians are admitting they don't know either. They're saying, well, there's Marlowe, there's all these other authors that may or may not have. Let's just move it to the next step where we don't know, and tell students, which is very exciting for students.
Yes.
Tell them
it's
up to you to decide.
Mm-hmm.
You look into it and you decide. There's a great list of professors and Oxfordians and others who are involved in trying to get universities to teach this. As far as I know, most universities still, it's taboo. You cannot go near it. They will not even let a theater student write a dissertation on the Shakespeare authorship question. My understanding, most universities they just won't allow it.
Absolutely.
Which is so breathtaking in its absurdity. It's 400 years ago.
Yep.
We're not talking about it's not the same as whether there was a moon landing. It's 400 years ago. I mean, what do we know for sure 400 years ago? And the idea, we know for sure that this traditional story, which is miraculous, happened, and we're not even going to let you look at any alternative.
No, it's funny because if the case is that you're not allowed to, write about the Shakespeare authorship question, that should be the actual standard. But you go and read Orthodox essays, and they'll bring up the authorship question only as this sort of thing to kind of wave away and say, look, this is the taboo that we're working against. This is the paradigm that we're trying to get rid of. And it seems just incredibly unfair to have that in the discussion and then not allow for some sort of actual side of that to defend itself. And
I believe it's called received knowledge or received wisdom.
Okay.
It is simply these are the facts that we are giving you, and you do not have the option to look into them. And it's one of the things I was looking at. This is a book I wrote. It's just a pamphlet, but it's just a basic premise of the Shakespeare authorship question. And what I do, I was having some fun earlier. I go through the three most, I believe these are the three top-selling popular books on Shakespeare, all of which believe the traditional story. One of them is by Bill Bryson, who is a phenomenal writer, called Shakespeare, The World as Stage. And he admits right at the beginning, he says at the beginning that he has, it's absolute nonsense, the Shakespeare authorship question. He says it's nothing, but every bit of it involves manipulative scholarship and sweeping misstatements of facts. That's his description of our position, that there's doubt. And then in the book, and I quote this, I love quoting them back to themselves. This is a quote in Bryson's book. "We have no record at all of his whereabouts for the 8 critical years when he left his wife and 3 young children in Stratford and became, with almost impossible swiftness, a successful playwright in London." Almost impossible. So Bryson's position is, it's almost impossible, but if you doubt it, you're a crackpot.
Right.
I mean, what? That's not, those two do not go together. Let's go to another book. Equal. I mean, this is Stephen Greenblatt's Will in the World, which I believe is the top-selling book on Shakespeare ever. His biography. This is a mythical biography where, I mean, he has been criticized by a lot of people. He just makes it up. Yep. He just makes it up, but it is adored by people. I mean, when I was reading, I was saying, he's just making anything up. What is this? This is a fact from the book. The biography is peppered with terms like "it is possible," "in all likelihood," "might have," "almost certainly," the wonderfully imaginative professorial double negative, "nor is it impossible," and Greenblatt's ever present favorite "must have," as in the phrase "Shakespeare must have." Must have is used in the book no less than 122 times. Jesus. Must have. Must have means I don't know if it happened. I'm just saying must have. I mean, and this is an incredibly popular book, right. Sold millions of copies.
Right.
Now we'll go to another book, another one almost as popular, James Shapiro's Contested Will. Again, these are 3 of the most #1 books in that contend that the traditional story is true. I think we touched on this. Anyway, Shakespeare, he makes the point that the traditional story is true. Shapiro, the author, James Shapiro, asserts that only someone working at the Globe could have made a mistake where occasionally the actor's name appears in the script instead of the character. I have had people come up to me and say, I know Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare because he is the only person that, in the first folio, sometimes the actual actor's name appears instead of the character. Think about that for a second. Why? You're saying that the actual author didn't go to the theater? I mean, if I'm writing a movie script for Jack Nicholson, I might write Jack, or, I mean, I don't have to be in the movie to write Jack.
Right.
It's an absolutely absurd comment, premise, yeah. And people quote it back to me. I mean, I got a quote from John Shahan, who's the chairman of the Shakespeare Authorship Coalition. The author could have been anyone who was familiar with the acting troupe and was thinking in terms of the actor rather than the character. Do Stratfordians think the real author wasn't a member of an acting troupe and would have never gone to the theater? I mean, what does it mean? It's just absurd. It's an absurd statement. And this is what it's, this house of cards. I've just gone through the books that are sustaining, these are the 3 main books sustaining this massive house of cards. And if you just read them critically, you go, wait a second, your argument makes no sense. It just doesn't add up. You're proving your point by stating things that aren't proofs.
What's the famous thing we like to quote from that one movie? That's not Shakespeare.
Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn in Charade from 1963, where she says some line and she goes, "That's Shakespeare, and Cary Grant goes, "That's not Shakespeare. That's stupid, and you just made it up."
That's it reminds me of people like Greenblatt and those sorts of things.
I mean, Brady and I literally got caught on a Greenblatt YouTube video a year or 2 ago arguing with some guy where Brady was just pointing out where Greenblatt was fudging on stuff, and some guy came in and was arguing with Brady, "Oh, you think you know more than this guy?" And Brady was just like, I'm not trying to say I do or don't. I'm just saying that those facts are not true. And, like the guy came at Brady like Brady was some lunatic. And
It was
Yeah.
Jeff Mead, wasn't it? I think it was.
Yeah, it was. That's one thing that I think has calmed down, because I used to get a lot of abuse online. I actually had one circumstance where several people, which was quite frightening, even though fortunately it never goes to the level of, death threats or anything of that nonsense. But I had a situation where several Stratfordians ganged up on me online, and it was quite frightening. It actually made me realize how horrifying the internet can be when it's exactly this. It's strange. It feels exactly the same as walking down a dark alley at night and suddenly you're surrounded by strangers. It's really, and that kind of thing, this business of calling people names, anyone who suggests the traditional story isn't true. I mean, actually, that's another. I list all these things that I've been called, or that comes out of the Birthplace Trust. And remember, the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust has the most to lose, because that's a tourist site. That they make millions,
Right.
Millions. I think they make £1 billion a year there.
Oh, wow.
In terms of tourism.
I believe that.
And these are some of the things they call it's a psychological aberration. People who doubt Shakespeare are snobs, they're ignorant, they're publicity hounds, they're parasitic leeches, have a poor sense of logic, refuse to accept evidence, certifiably mad. All of these pejoratives come out of the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. And that, I think, has calmed down. So in answer to your question, we've made enormous progress. The fact that they admit they don't know who wrote it, they're holding on to this idea. There's lots of collaboration, but Shakespeare was the main author, which is a very weak position compared to the one they held, for hundreds of years. So I think we're not far from just simply accepting we don't know who wrote the works. We want to find out. And first of all, like you said, if it's North or Mary Sidney or Amelia Bassano, or, I mean, first of all, I think it's wonderful that people are writing books that a woman wrote Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
You know that there are people terribly threatened by it.
Yep.
That are just mortified. How dare you say a woman wrote Shakespeare? Oh my God! What? I mean, I don't. That's beyond sexism. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to hear the story? Why wouldn't you want to investigate and open up the period and say, oh, this woman, this is why she could have done it, because of these things. No, I don't. I can't hear it. I can't hear it. No, absolutely not.
Absolutely. There's a channel out there, The Resolute Florio, by Mariana Iaconi, and she's pretty great. And I don't always agree with her, and you'll definitely see me on her comment boards arguing and going at it with folks. But there was one guy that came at her for a video, and he, it sounded like a Nazi hate crime, the stuff that he was pitching at her. And it was literally because she was Italian and she was pitching in Italian and she was messing with our English white American heritage. And like, I couldn't even like figure out how to I was like, what is the, I didn't think that, but I guess there are people out there that somehow are smart enough to read Shakespeare, but not smart enough to get past that kind of thought process, and not smart enough to realize not to do that publicly. It's a real issue that there are still people that this is almost a cultural, religious, ancestral heritage thing that whether they have actual legitimate claim to that or not, which they don't, they feel that they do, and this is an affront to them, and this is some kind of culture war, and I just would like people to take those stakes away, because I don't think anybody's really that into Shakespeare. I mean, we all love Shakespeare, and I read Shakespeare all the time. I feel like the more you read it, the less you should be inclined to that kind of thought stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a problem. But one of the things, at least in England, they've done, whenever they do surveys like, what are you most proud of? Shakespeare's number one. Right. And because he's mythologized to the point where he's George Washington and so forth. Yeah. That part, the idea that you're pulling you're pulling the legs out from under this icon. They fear that they're going to lose this well, this tourist site and this great mythological creature called Shakespeare. So that is part of the problem, it is a legitimate fear because nobody says the plays were written in Stratford-upon-Avon. They just simply say the guy that wrote them was born there. So if the guy that they say wrote them didn't write them, then there's no connection between Stratford-upon-Avon and the plays, and that is always going to be a big fear for them.
Right.
Based on all these conversations y'all just been having, some of the ramifications of Shakespeare not being Shakespeare, obviously, birthplace trust losing out on funds, tourism, that sort of stuff, right? But, just beyond that sort of that take, and this gets a little more speculative, right? But, let's just, beyond, those immediate ramifications, they see Shakespeare as this heritage thing, and it is so fundamental to English, right? Like every English student, whether you're in India or Canada or wherever you're taking, like Shakespeare is the go-to, touchstone, right? And it just makes me think of like, what are the, beyond, the people losing out on money, what are the actual cultural, societal ramifications of actually discovering that, maybe there's much more to be at hand with the project itself. Once again, I just don't think this anomaly of someone who just, I think it would take, someone who really loves literature, but it almost seems like a very calculated love of literature to make it so powerful, right? Because it just seems that the trajectory of the English Empire is taken off right as this stuff is sort of coming out. And it just seems to be, we sort of say about empire and King James Bible is the sort of like, sacred text, and you kind of got Shakespeare coming out at the same time as your sort of profane text. You got King James Bible and Shakespeare. That's like what is on like every Englishman and American's bookshelf for the longest time, right? So what are the actual ramifications and maybe much deeper things to actually ponder about the revelation of such a thing happening?
Yeah, no, it's you're hitting on why it's so difficult to change the position. Shakespeare is unlike any other writer. I mean, I don't think there's a writer in any language that approaches him. He's godlike. Mm-hmm. So, and it is, either a religion or a semi-religion or whatever you want to call it. It has religious qualifications. There's no question about that. So that part will remain. I think maybe Mark Rylance's position that Shakespeare was there, and he certainly was a coordinator and a theater manager, and it doesn't remove him from the importance. But I guess that there'll always be a fear that in Stratford-upon-Avon anyway, that gee, if everyone came to believe that it was a collaboration of a bunch of people, and maybe Shakespeare wasn't even one of the writers, maybe we're not going to have all those tour buses. Yeah. I mean, that's always going to be a consideration.
Absolutely. And, I feel like if they're forward thinking, they might start, trying to buy up some land over near Wilton, or buy up some land in some other places like Fisher's Folly, and, at least start getting ahead of the curve, and then they can make the transition a little faster. Like, like some of these oil industries with the alternative energy, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a good idea.
This is maybe one last big question for you, and then I'll turn it over to Brady here. So, of course, we need to dig deeper in all of the actual, research to help forward the Shakespeare authorship question. And we got to do all sorts of stuff like, YouTube videos, TikTok posts, your basic social media outreach. But what do you think about the future of the Shakespeare authorship question in the art world itself, like, theater or film or novels or things like that?
Well, I mean, the first thing comes to mind is the unfortunate fact that what was the name of the
Anonymous?
Yeah, Anonymous. Yeah. The unfortunate fact that Anonymous put knowingly false facts in there, and instead of using Richard II as the play that Essex was doing, they switched it to Richard III because it gave them the opportunity to have a deformed character and so forth. That was very unfortunate, mm-hmm. because that movie could have had enormous power. I mean, you had Derek Jacobi, you had Mark Rylance, and you needed to at least have everything as factual as you know them. You can't. What happened in that script is they said, well, you know what, it'll make a better story if we just put in knowingly false things. And it really undermined the project, which is unfortunate. It really should have been, at least to any person's position, an Oxfordian, whoever, this is what I know happened. Not, it's a mix of some things that are authorship and other things that are just fictional to make a good story.
Absolutely.
So it would be nice if you could get Mark Rylance and Derek Jacobi together to do a movie that actually tells the truth. That might be more effective. It's, you know what, the positive side is students love this. You know, they don't like the traditional story. Nobody likes it.
Nope.
You know, the only people that hold it up are the ones that have a vested interest. Students want to hear, wow, really? Nobody knows? Maybe I can figure it out.
Yep.
So anything in terms of movies or books that intrigues people to look for themselves and figure it out. And the fact that it has expanded to so many candidates, I think, to me, that's what's so exciting. Of course, the Stratfordians mock it. They say, oh, they'll either tell you it's this guy or that guy or this guy or that guy, as if that somehow proves that the traditional story is true. And what it does prove is that because the traditional story has been so powerful and because academics say you cannot look into this, we're very far behind where we would be. If several hundred years ago or even 50 years ago, professors were saying, we don't know what the traditional story is. Let's do some research and find out. Anyway, that's my position on it.
Okay. No, that's an excellent answer. Because, I want it to be this kind of maybe possible burgeoning market that we could, take hold of. But on the other hand, it's like this has been such a firewall for us for so long, until we really try to test it and really try to push it, will we be able to break through that barrier? And, people like you have done an excellent job paving the way for that. And, Mark putting out his solo authorship play, that's awesome. It would be nice to hopefully get some younger theatrical people into this. Most of the younger people I see getting into this are definitely coming through English departments in the universities, Phoebe Neer or Mariana or Matt Hutchinson or a buddy of ours, Daniel Callan. They're all kind of the under 40 crowd, but none of them are super theatrical people, and most of the theatrical people I talk to that are in the under 40 crowd, they're kind of averse to this, because I think they feel this is the lit department's elitism coming into our blue collar theater world, and I feel like that's so backwards. I feel like if they just kind of open up for a second, they could see, hey, look, we have a whole host of Henslow writers in here. We got a whole host of people on all sorts of social levels being united by the theater. That should be the narrative you guys should want to pitch. But yeah, trying to refigure that, it's tough.
Well, you inspire me because you guys, to me, are young, and I've been surrounded by people that are older than me. I mean, when I go to Oxfordian events, there's these wonderful people who are 60, 70, and 80 years old, unfortunately, and a lot of them are getting on. So you've inspired me. So, and your work here will inspire others. It'll go on because, we've been talking for almost an hour and we're just scraping the surface. I mean, every time you mention something, I think of a bunch of other ideas that could happen. Like what you were just saying there, this idea that anyone who doubts the traditional story is an elitist. No, it's the elitist professors that are preventing us looking into who wrote the works. It's not that we're elitist. I'm not elitist. I'm a doubter. I'm prepared for anybody to have written Shakespeare. I don't care where they come from. So it's quite ironic that the elite professorial academics, the orthodoxy, is saying, no, you can't look into this, and saying, if you do, you're an elitist.
Yeah, it's a classic Orwellian doublespeak, right?
It is.
It
is.
Let me see. Did you have any other questions you had, Brady?
One, I was going to ask, have you ever been to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival?
I sure have. It's great.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw the one of the more famous plays there. I saw the hip hop Hamlet. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
It was Hamlet done with hip hop. It was great. It was so great. I've seen Hamlet. When somebody said, "What's your favorite play?" I don't know if I have a favorite play, but I've seen Hamlet so many times and enjoyed it so many times. And that one was just sensational. Let me just a scene that they did. I thought was so brilliant. As the audience comes in, the stage is full of all the actors, and they're at Hamlet's father's funeral. There's a coffin on stage. All of the actors in the company are on stage, and before the play even starts, we realize they've had this ceremony, and people are starting to move away while the funeral's over. Okay. And they slowly disperse. And just before the play starts, there's one person left on stage, Hamlet. And he's sitting there with all the empty chairs, assumedly in some church, staring at the coffin. It was so powerful. It was so wonderful. I mean, the play hadn't even started, and you were already into it. It was that was fantastic.
Is that
fantastic.
The one that opens and they're doing the gospel singing?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I have totally seen that one. That's Kenny Leon.
We're talking about many years ago, so I just remember. I remember the hip hop was fantastic. Okay. It worked great, and the open. I can't quote you on more than that. But yes, I've been to it and seen several shows there. It's thanks to the great Earl Showerman. Earl Showerman's Oxfordian. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a doctor who's really into the medical aspect of Shakespeare and the Greek elements of it, because of course the traditional story, it's very hard to explain Shakespeare's knowledge of Greece and Greek mythology and the language Greek and Greek medicine with the traditional story. So he's done a lot of work on that, and he invited me out there and my wife, and we had a great time. Yeah, it's a really fantastic festival. Why do you mention it anyway?
The only Shakespeare performance I've ever seen was actually there, in Ashland, Oregon. I've seen Comedy of Errors, and we recently just read that for book club, so I can attest that reading Comedy of Errors was a lot funner to watch than to read. But my great aunt actually is heavily involved up there. Her name is Peggy Rubin, and so she's been involved with that whole acting scene up there, and that's who we stayed with, and she's the one who got us hooked up with the place. So I just thought I'd ask.
And
it's great. Yeah, it's great. I highly recommend anybody that's out there go there for sure. It's a really top-notch professional Shakespeare company.
My buddy, who's a big Broadway junkie, recently figured out that it's not just Shakespeare that shows at that festival, and so because of that, he's like, "Chance, can we go next summer for a week or two?" And I'm a teacher and I get summers off, so I was like, "Let's do it." So hopefully that's on the list for next summer. We'll see. Me being a teacher, it's this weird thing where I want to spread the Shakespeare authorship question to my students, and I just want to spread it like a wildfire. But we're getting to a point in the TikTok Gen A, Gen Z kind of thing where some of these kids literally don't even know what Shakespeare is. It's
sure.
They've maybe heard the term, but it might as well be Dickens or Twain or any other kind of old name. And, from there I end up having to do the thing where I'm like, well, you guys like The Lion King, right? That's kind of pretty much Hamlet. And you guys love Scarface. That's pretty much Macbeth. And, kind of walking them through that. And then from there I can maybe teach Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet. And usually we got to do Spark Notes and watch the movie. And so it's really difficult to ever get to the depth where I can start getting into some nitty gritty that really, gets your mind churning about authorship question type stuff. I end up having to just do so much groundwork to lay Shakespeare into their lives because they're a whole generation that rejects books. Reading is not cool. And Shakespeare's kind of the poster child of this thing that's not cool. And, Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a really difficult question because with the internet and TikTok and so and the fact that we're getting further and further away from the language that Shakespeare used.
Right.
You know, my grandfather was born in Ireland on a farm, had almost no schooling, um, immigrated to Canada, and he had a huge, complete Shakespeare, and every night he would read Shakespeare to himself.
Oh wow.
Now, how is that even possible? Well, because he was so long ago that those words were easy for him.
Yep.
And over the pace of the last 100 years, it's gone. It's almost become another language. And that, on the other side, I'll tell you a horror story. A nephew of mine was brought to the Stratford Festival in Canada, which is a great Shakespeare festival.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought their whole school there. Isn't that wonderful? You're bringing these kids to see Shakespeare. They didn't prepare them. They just put them in the audience, and they had no idea what was going on. Zero. The teacher somehow thought that it would work by osmosis. And as soon as they started saying, Shakespearean words like suit is a good one, because suit, you think, oh, he's wearing a suit, and it means your plea. I mean, he said everyone was lost. I said, well, what did you do? He said, oh, I put my headphones on. I didn't listen. And what the teacher had done there, all that expense, bringing them, several hundred miles to see this Shakespeare play with no preparation. All they did was convince everyone in that class that Shakespeare was something they would never wanted to hear from again. Wow. So it is a real dilemma. You need to get people excited about this language.
Yeah.
The one wonderful thing about people like Mark Rylance and Derek Jacobi is they have ways of conveying what Shakespeare means. A good example is a bare bodkin, which is such a weird word for a knife in Hamlet. And if you're a good actor, you make sure it's clear.
Right.
I mean, you pick up a knife, or you do something so that the people that don't know what a bodkin is will go, oh, it must be an old word for knife. You don't just say bare bodkin and say, I hope you studied Shakespeare and have a thesaurus with you or something. I mean, it's our concordance. It can be done. I mean, great Shakespearean actors can make you think you understand more than you do. But yeah, we're getting further and further away from the language, so it is more and more difficult.
Yeah. And I'm glad you actually brought up the Stratford Festival, because I feel like they, more than any other kind of company or festival out there, really try to make these accessible. They use a lot of the American English or Canadian English dialect. They don't, they rarely use anything fully British. It maybe gets a little transatlantic-y. Like, I was watching one of their Love's Labor's Lost, and everybody kind of sounds like regular American Mid-Atlantic, and then Holofernes was slightly more transatlantic, and like that was it. Like, but it's miraculous how well Shakespeare works with that, and since that's been figured out, and I think it's partly been figured out because of people like Mark Rylance and Derek Jacobi, where this is what we need to emphasize, the expression, the way to translate this through gesture, through nonverbal communication, to bolster the verbal communication. That's sort of been emphasized, I think, in the last, 10 or 15 years in theater, much more so.
Yeah, they're obviously aware of this. They have the advantage that Shakespeare sells. I mean,
Right.
It just sells.
Right.
I've had that experience myself. The plays that I have that have Shakespeare in the title, they do well, and generally much better. I'm doing one on Joan of Arc that does well, because almost everyone's heard of Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
So it's Shakespeare sells, so that helps. You don't want people going there that don't have any introduction to the language, because of course it is impossible to understand if you have no connection to it whatsoever. You
Right.
do need some preparation. I hope schools keep teaching it. There is this terrible problem and that's where the authorship question can help, because we don't want to study old white guys anymore, old European white guys. Well, what if it was a woman?
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Does that help? Maybe that's what we need to do. It's a female
Right.
writer, and of course we can do that. So that is a difficulty. I'm not sure. I mean, there are people trying to deal with it. And that's a wonderful thing about the internet. I've seen some extraordinary productions. There's that great black African Royal Shakespeare company. You ever seen that one of Julius Caesar?
Yes.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's phenomenal. That is just breathtaking.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's so astounding about Shakespeare. Like Titus Andronicus, which T.S. Eliot called, perhaps the stupidest, most uninspired play ever written. I've seen scenes in it that are so breathtaking and so overwhelming that I go, I don't know that there's anything in Shakespeare as good. Right. I mean, if you start thinking one of the plays is bad, see a good production of it, and you suddenly go, "Whoa! I didn't realize that was there."
Yep.
I mean, that scene in Titus Andronicus where he's describing the girl with her I can't remember her character's name, with her tongue cut out and her
Lavinia.
Lavinia. I mean, when that's well done, you'll remember it the rest of your life.
Absolutely. I love Julie Taymor's film version of it.
Yeah, there it is. She does that scene great.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up this phrase, Shakespeare makes money. Shakespeare's, that's what makes the money. Because this is a bone that I've had to pick with the sort of theatrical world, is that we don't get anything but the canonical Shakespeare, and we just, at this point, it's almost just the seasonal menu that they just recycle. Okay, you get this year we'll do Richard III and Romeo and Juliet and Cymbeline, and next year we'll do Hamlet and Othello, and we just get to rotate through the 36 plays. Some of them get a little more time than others, but at this point, we do get Pericles, we do get Cymbeline, we do get Winter's Tale put on, but you still can't see really any Marlowe plays.
It's funny, huh?
You don't get any Johnson plays put on in Broadway, and there is the argument, of course, Shakespeare's better. Like Shakespeare's top tragedies, it's really hard to find much comparison from the era. But I do think that there are some that do kind of come close from, authors like John Marston with The Malcontent, or John Webster's The Duchess of Malfi. And
that one's great.
And it's so hard to see.
Yeah, but imagine you say The Duchess of Malfi. I mean,
yeah.
What percentage of people have ever even heard of it?
Right.
It's a great play. It's certainly
right.
I remember. I'll never forget it because I studied it. I don't remember what university, but I was, wow, this is good. It stuck with me. But you can do that at a big festival, maybe,
right?
Because you have critics coming in, and if they give it a good review, you can sell it.
Okay.
But if it's not, well, you made a point there, like the idea that Marlowe doesn't sell. I never really thought of it, but it's true. I mean, who puts on Marlowe? Even though Marlowe was equally famous as Shakespeare at one time.
I think part of it is when people were putting on Marlowe in the early 90s, he did get really tied in with the sort of queer theory, queer lit scene. And I think that has sort of been hard to get him back into the more mainstream view. But I think another issue with Marlowe is just that his absolute best play is The Jew of Malta. And, because of, anti-Semitism in media, like you cannot put on Jew of Malta.
No, I understand that. And there's the same problem with, I saw a production of Shylock, of Merchant of Venice, and they did it as Nazis.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they just said, well, look, there's only one way to deal with this. We'll just do it as Nazis.
Yeah, just
wow. Okay, straight to it. Wow. Okay. That's wild.
That way nobody can,
okay. Yeah, they're putting it out there. That's hilarious.
Oh god.
Yeah, that's one way of dealing with it. Yeah, that's a problem, of course, and those elements. Take Me the Shrew. I mean, I think it's an incredibly sexist play. I mean, I've heard the argument that it's not. I think this is really sexist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, I've heard this argument. No, she's not. She's actually, I've had all these sort of arguments that try and
put Kate as some sort of hero, that she's fully aware of it, that maybe she's
not
manipulating everybody, and
doesn't mean what she's saying.
Yeah. Tough sell. Tough sell.
I've heard that argument. I'm not the expert. I don't know. I've seen it, and I go, "Oh my god, that just makes me squirm."
Yep. because okay, so I have what I think is $1 million idea, and it's, you're gonna hear it and be like, Chance, that's not $1 million idea. That's a go try it out at the festival idea. But I think the bridge to getting out of the Shakespeare canon is absolutely the play Arden of Faversham. It's got an awful title, but just, forget the title for a second and just, call it The Cool Awesome Murder Play or whatever catchy title. And
That's
from
a
there,
good
we
title.
have absolutely the most modern play of the era. Its main character is a woman who's cheating on her husband, and she's doing it because she wants to feel freedom and wants to feel the world for herself. But her and her lover that are cheating on her husband decide we're going to kill her husband, and the whole play is them constantly trying to get this murder pulled off. They keep having to pull in more and more people. The conspiracy gets bigger and bigger, more and more,
Shenanigans.
yeah, and like unyieldy, and to the point where or unwieldy, and to the point where it all breaks and strains, and it breaks all their relationships. But the whole time, Alice Arden and her lover, like, pushing each other through this. Oh, we'll do this together. I love you, and I can do it if you do it. But then when it doesn't go well, they're constantly blaming each other, and and
It sounds. I've heard of it, but I've never read it. It sounds incredibly modern. That's a. But what do you? I think your title is much better. The Cool Awesome Murder Play. I think that's nice.
If you've ever seen, the TV show Fargo or the movie Fargo, it's absolutely that to a T. It's let's have this horrible tragedy, but tell it in this real down-to-earth style with this real wry, ironic, dark comic tone, to the point where the dark comedy and the tragedy clash in the climax. And
so
how do you get Shakespeare? How do you really sell it though?
And so here's how you sell it: is that it's right now being argued to be probably written by Shakespeare. You got one contingency that says it's written by Shakespeare, maybe a co-writer like Marlowe or Watson, and then the other contingency says Kid. I think you just plop Shakespeare's name on it, and to appease everybody else, throw the other names on there as collaborators. So this is Shakespeare and Company from the early years, from 92 when he's still collaborating. You can bill it as Shakespeare, super modern. It even draws some of the other names in it so that we can maybe expand outwards, expand to other apocrypha. And it's only got 6 or 7 roles. It's breezy, but it's potent with the language too.
Well, I'm on board. I'm going to read it and put it on myself.
Please do. Please do. I don't want any credit. I just want this to be on stage so I can take my buddy Ian to go see it.
Thank you. I'm very interested. I'm very interested.
Yeah, go text Rylance.
I didn't realize.
Okay.
Brady, what'd you say?
He said, yeah, go text Mr. Mark Rylance and get him going, and get him on the rooftop, get everybody signaling. We need to see Arden of Faversham. And so, yeah, to me, it's just a trick of how do you get that title to be interesting.
But Mark Rylance, if Mark Rylance is doing it, it doesn't matter what the title is. So, that's the way it works. I mean, look, as I say, the reason I did when I decided I was going to do a play on Joan of Arc, I said the title is going to start Joan of Arc. The full title of my play is Joan of Arc Ascending.
Right.
But the very first thing the audience is going to see in a program is Joan of Arc. Oh, I'm interested in Joan of Arc. I've done it long enough to know that if your play is, My Uncle Charlie, no matter how great that play is, Joan of Arc's going to outsell My Uncle Charlie.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. But I think the cool, awesome murder play, I think that's a good title.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm no Shakespeare myself. I try. I pick up a few things from him here and there. But let me see.
Well, that's one thing I was going to say about the sack scene too, right? It's not just how only Shakespeare sells, but that's another problem that Chance and I kind of come up a lot with, even other genuine sackers, right? They love looking into Shakespeare. They love looking at all their ciphers for Bacon or Oxford biography. They love looking for Shakespeare. We'll be like, hey, guys, we think Thomas Dekker, he's got some interesting stuff for what's going on with, Michael Drayton. Has anyone read that? And they'll be like, yeah, not important. And so, yeah, it's just like not even just, the general audience, but even the so-called Shakespeare lovers in the other scene, right? Where we're sort of being like, hey, some of these other plays are worth your while. Hey, there could be some really cool nuggets in here to really, push into the culture nowadays. But yeah, even the sackers are like, oh, we don't have time to read Thomas Dekker. Even if Chance and Brady find some, very interesting parallels or weird biography matchups or, line exchanges. And yeah, but it's,
Well, but the way Chance just mentioned that, you go with, if you go with the original title and say, unknown author, no, it's not going to work. But if you change the title and say by Shakespeare or Shakespeare, whatever, you do have to market things, and the beauty of it is it's all public domain. There's
Right.
nothing that says you have to leave it in the original. Is it in iambic pentameter?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And not perfectly wholly in verse, but there are tons of verse sections.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so there's nothing that says you have to leave it that way. I mean, it sounds to me that the story works.
Mm-hmm.
That's the incredible thing about Shakespeare. No matter what angle you take on it, I mean, I've seen movies of Shakespeare where they threw out all the language and the story was riveting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's the incredible thing with Shakespeare. You have great stories, great poetry, great dramatic scenes, incredible information and knowledge of Renaissance England. I mean, and Europe. It's breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking. Anyway, guys, I got to hit the road. I really enjoy this. I'm really impressed with you too. I think it's wonderful that you're into it and you're so aware of everything that's going on, and you give me hope. So I'm sure your videos are inspiring people and getting them. Just you have to get over the barrier and see it. I remember one teacher told me that no, this was actually a football player came up to me and he was saying, "Oh, you do theater?" He said, "Yeah, Shakespeare." Yeah. And he said, the teacher told me we were going to see a movie on Shakespeare, and we were all like, "Oh no!" But it was Polanski's Macbeth, and we went, "That's great!" We couldn't believe how good it was. So there are ways into it.
Right. Right.
He walked around the rest of his life saying, "Yeah, I saw Polanski's Macbeth. I know Shakespeare."
Absolutely. Okay. And so, and to me, that's the answer. Is Shakespeare did it through art, so we can, write all the essays in the world, but that's how you know when it's happened is when everybody's watching Shakespeare authorship art. And I don't know. You've, Mark Twain first, but you've helped pave that way for us. And, thanks so much for that. And thanks for joining us here tonight, Kier or Dr. Cutler. It's been an absolute pleasure. This is way too cool, an absolute dream come true. And hope to speak with you and keep in touch with you in the future. And guys, he's got his own YouTube channel. He's went and posted all his, clips and videos from his one-man shows. And you can go and watch, little 2-minute clips if you don't have time. If you got the time, go sit down and watch his longer ones, like his original is Shakespeare Dead. It's about 45 minutes. It's unbelievably funny. It's informative. It's accessible. The whole family can watch it. So, please go check that out and let him start changing your mind so that we maybe don't sound as crazy anymore.
Wow, that was nice. Thanks, Chance, and thanks, Brady. I really appreciate it. Invite me back when something new happens, or if I discover something. I'm going to go read some more and expand my knowledge thanks to you guys. And I'm going to keep watching your videos because I learn a lot. I love that thing about John Dee. That was really fascinating. The magician, and it just made me think about that. The idea of astrologers and astrology, and just the idea of believing in alchemy and believing in these things. It's very exciting. I mean, that's what I love about Shakespeare. Is it's exciting stuff.
Okay. Thanks, Kier. Hope to see you again. I'm going to let Brady sign us out.
Yeah, thanks so much, and we'll be in touch. And as always, Nullius in Verba, everyone. Adios.
Adios.